Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there on your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
All right. Hello and welcome, folks. I hope you are ready for this because today we are talking about achieving zero trust, key tools and strategies to accelerate your security journey. Zero trust is a strategy that is becoming adopted more and more by security and IT professionals as it helps reduce database breaches and significantly reduces the impact of a breach if it is moving laterally through the network. It is much more difficult to move that way with zero trust. Likely, many of you in the audience are already implementing zero trust in some form or fashion in your organization, but perhaps you're looking for tools and strategies to manage your evolving needs. Luckily, the awesome folks at Zscaler, Netskope, Cisco, Rubrik, and HPE Aruba Networking have sent some of their top experts to help us navigate this conversation and share the best tools and strategies to achieve zero trust and make your implementation of these tools seamless. This is going to be a great day, and I can't wait to get started. So let's dive right in. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy, and if you haven't been on a webinar with me before, I want to say hello. Nice to meet you. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and I have my fellow moderators here, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward on live chat today. Not only that, but we have Jess joining our keynote presenter in just a quick minute to do a little bit of Q&A with her. Okay, let's talk prizes. I know you're all waiting for that. Of course, you've got prizes in the form of valuable information, but today on the EcoCast, we also have three $300 Amazon gift cards up for grabs. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. And hey, with that last little thing, I think we're ready to rock. Today we have an incredible keynote speaker planned for you. We have Lindsay Kay, the Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Human Security, to open today's EcoCast. And as I mentioned, my fellow moderator Jess is going to interview Lindsay. Jess and Lindsay, I'm going to hand things over to you. Take it away.
All right, well, Lindsay, welcome back. Always so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Always a good time. And today we get to talk about zero trust, which I love. Zero trust is one of my favorite topics to get into. I think it's such an interesting psychology and technology and a little blur of all kinds of fun human elements there, right? And one of the things that, and you and I have talked about this before, zero trust is sort of on the radar. And I think we all sort of understand now that we're talking about an approach and a holistic strategy rather than like just a straight up checklist. But there are a lot of elements to it, and there's a lot to be thinking about. And I'm wondering if maybe rather than trying to take all of zero trust, which is just huge, and we only have a few minutes together here today, could we maybe zoom in a little bit on one aspect or one area of zero trust and pick it apart a little bit in detail together today?
Okay. Yeah, of course, Jess. So thank you again for having me. And I'm thrilled to be back, like I said, this time talking a little bit about zero trust and looking at how many popular lateral movement techniques become far less useful for threat actors when zero trust is implemented in an organization. So first, I want to briefly define what zero trust architecture is so that we can all start on the same page. Simply, a zero trust strategy is based on the idea of always verifying access and authentication rather than trusting that this has been done before. So basically, avoiding assumed trust with resources in other parts of the network. So as you can imagine, implementing this type of verification at different stages of organizational workflows on data and services will make it more challenging for a threat actor who has gained access to some part of the network to move laterally within it. So the three tenets at the core of zero trust are terminate every connection, protect data using granular, context-based policies, and reduce risk by eliminating the attack surface. These core tenets rely on increased visibility of traffic within the network, adding other context-based verification parameters to decide if an access request is valid, and users to app or app to app connections over connections to networks, respectively. So, how does this look in practice? Let's look at a couple examples of popular types of lateral movement tactics used by threat actors. So, first, using alternate authentication materials, such as using pass the hash or pass the ticket, both rely on what could effectively be considered a second stage of authentication material in order to gain additional access. So, what do I mean by this? Instead of using a password, which is something we can encourage users to choose wisely and protect, the threat actor uses a stolen hash or stolen Kerberos tickets to authenticate. So, they don't need to know this password and have bypassed that point of protection. And these techniques are not necessarily hard for a threat actor to implement. So if you look, Mimikatz is an openly available and implements actually both of these, while other openly available tools such as things like Cobalt Strike, CrackMap Exec, and Empire all implement pass the hash, and Puppy implements pass the ticket. So how can a zero trust architecture make it easier to thwart these types of techniques? One of the core pieces of zero trust architecture brings us is implementing additional validation techniques. So using things like identity, device, and location as key pieces of authentication, or blocking traffic until a fingerprint or identity can be verified. So this additional data effectively adds another layer of verification above what the alternative authentication material is abusing, which is bypassing users' passwords. So the advantage of zero trust here means that you are not relying exclusively on ensuring that there is no credential overlap between systems on the network, password complexity, or which users are in which administration groups and which systems. So you have this additional layer of verification on top of these best practices that augments the security that they offer. Next, threat actors will often use exploitation of remote services in which they take advantage of vulnerabilities or misconfigured permissions in connected remote services in order to gain access to other parts of the network. A few examples that we are all likely familiar with include the use of Eternal Blue and Zero Logon, but more generally, resources such as SMB, RDP, and web server services can all be at risk. Here, in addition to remediating vulnerabilities and privileged account management, ensuring that network segmentation is appropriately set up is a key piece of advice for mitigating this technique. One of the benefits of incorporating zero trust architecture is that, again, these principles do not need to be relied upon solely to ensure the network security. When we consider remediating vulnerabilities, which we know and continue to hear is incredibly important for an organization's security policy, we also often hear in the same sentence that doing so often presents challenges. The same thing with network segmentation, especially if the organization's network was designed in such a way that this was not the case. Redoing the network of a large organization is not a simple challenge. And while there are similar steps that can be taken, complete overhaul to fully mitigate the threat of lateral movement is not likely to be feasible for many security or IoT teams. While implementing zero trust does take work, please hear from the many vendors here that we have today who will give you ideas of how you can think about doing so in your own organization. And then finally, I want to add that implementing a zero trust architecture combines a lot of the principles that I've had the opportunity to speak with you about previously. So, namely, the use of multi factor authentication, strong passwords, network segmentation, assessing resources for misconfigurations, implementing access control, and more. So, while we continue to see threat actors conduct these attacks, such as deploying ransomware or other malware, or conducting fraud or data theft, the implementation of the security principles described above, possibly even though through a zero trust architecture solution, will continue to make it more challenging for them to do so and help keep our organizations safer. So thank you very much, and back over to you, Jess.
Oh man, thank you so much, Lindsay. Some great information and takeaways. Obviously, that is the direction that we're all looking to go, is that safer organization. And that's what we're here to talk about today. But, our whole theme for our keynote this morning was to kind of take this big thing and make it feel a little actionable. And I think you've given us, a good bite to chew on this giant zero trust burger. If you had to give sort of that first step, that key takeaway that you want everyone to be walking away really mulling over this morning and as we go through the rest of our time together, what would you say your main takeaway and key thought is today?
Sure. So we talk a lot about, initial access and preventing initial access, which is such a hard problem. So now that we're sort of talking a little bit more about zero trust and we're really looking at lateral movement, this is where a lot of threat actors do spend time, and we have additional chances to prevent, a ransomware attack or other type of cyber attack from taking place. So really kind of focusing on this lateral movement, which threat actors will continue to do, and then implementing zero trust, or at least some principles of it, take bite-sized pieces where you can, really kind of gives us sort of that additional advantage. And what we're really doing is we really want to slow them down. So it's not going to completely go away. Threat actors will continue to adapt and grow, but really looking at the ways that zero trust can sort of help slow them down, make it harder for them to execute, really does sort of up our game and up our chances of stopping an attack before it gets extremely serious.
When you said that, Lindsay, all of a sudden I had the image of the original Home Alone movies, and you're not getting rid of the wet bandits or whatever they were, but you are setting a whole bunch of booby traps that will slow them down.
Absolutely.
You are preventing their lateral movement through the house with paint cans and bits of Christmas ornaments and whatever else. Hopefully, a little more sophisticated than that.
Hopefully.
So. Thank you very much, Lindsay, for giving us some great things to think about this morning, starting our day out on a wonderful note. It is always such a blast to chat with you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'll see you next time.
Amazing. I have to say, I love this idea of booby trapping the house like Home Alone. Lots of nostalgia there. I do want to point out that I have a poll up for all of you here in the audience. This is my test to make sure you're here, alive, kicking, paying attention. Basically, the poll is just asking, what is your time frame for adding new or updating your existing IT solutions at your company? Perhaps it's right away. You're here, you need to take some action. Perhaps it's a year out, 2 years out, or maybe you're just not sure and you are here to get a lay of the land and learn a little bit more about what zero trust options and tools are at your disposal. Again, thank you to Lindsay for being here. Thank you for Jess for picking a great focus within zero trust and making it actionable. And with that, I do want to mention that there's a $50 Best Question gift card, which will be up for grabs for each session. So as you're listening to each of our presenters today, if you have questions, fantastic. Please throw those in the chat. We will have live Q&A with our presenters today, or nearly all of them. So we want to hear your questions and have them answered. And with that, we have 5 great teams presenting. So I want to get the show on the road and make sure we have plenty of time for everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to a familiar face here on the EcoCast. I'm sure many of you have had the pleasure to hear him speak in the past, but just in case you haven't, I assure you, you are in for a treat. Our first team up is the Zscaler team, and we have Sanjit Ganguly. He's the CTO in residence who will be presenting on the Zscaler solution. And we also have Jacob Serpa. He is going to be handling some Q&A after the presentation. So both Sanjit and Jacob are in the house. That said, I am going to kick things over to you, Sanjit. And with that, the floor is yours.
So realizing business value with zero trust security. So hello, my name is Sanjit Ganguly. I'm a CTO in residence here at Zscaler. And today we'll talk about how does zero trust actually achieve business value. So the reason we're talking about this at all is because, as you can imagine, transformation is a hot topic right now. And we are all being forced to transform digitally for the purposes of improving productivity, lowering costs and complexity, reducing risk. This is something that we're all organizations are challenged to do to stay competitive in an increasingly competitive world. And when we talk about digital transformation, we are really thinking about it in what is digital transformation, but then what is secure digital transformation? Now, most transformation, as we've already seen, has started with application transformation, modernizing applications, in a lot of ways, moving applications from a data center into cloud-based environments, leveraging modern technology, becoming cloud native, right? That's been something that we've been talking about for quite some time. But really what has started to challenge this ability to securely digital transform has not been the limitations of cloud or of application transformation, but rather of traditional network and security. And what became very, very evident through the COVID pandemic is that as workers moved home or really wanted to or needed to work from anywhere, and as applications became more and more distributed, the traditional network and security architectures really didn't cope very well. And so in order to do a full and complete secure digital transformation, really we have to think about this in three ways. It's combining application, network, and security transformation. Now, in order to do network and security transformation, this is where we're going to start to talk about zero trust architecture. And really, if you are doing a movement from hub and spoke, traditional hub and spoke networks to direct connectivity, which is really what's required, and away from castle and moat security architectures that protect increasingly small amounts of footprint within, let's say, a data center into zero trust architecture, this is where some of these new types of technologies come into play. So with that knowledge, or with that background, let's start to talk about what exactly do we mean when we talk about zero trust architecture. Now, zero trust has been a terminology that's been around for many years, but really the concept is fairly straightforward. If we think about just historically trust, or the concept of trust used to be quite simple in the world of IT. Back in the day, you had an untrusted zone. This was kind of the internet, an area where you really couldn't trust much. And there was a trusted zone where your employees were, where your applitions were, where your data was. And frankly, it was all typically within four walls, your headquarters. Now, what happened was, or what happened since then, and is that you would originally be able to protect that untrusted or trusted zone with a simple firewall. If anyone remembers this NetScreen device from many years ago, there were two ports. There was an untrusted port and a trusted port. And as long as you kept those two areas completely separated, you were okay. But since then, a few things have happened. Number one, our applications have moved beyond just our four walls into the cloud, and our users have moved and became remote, and we've extended our network using a wide area network. And when you do that, when you extend your network to remote places, when you extend your applications, the line between trusted and untrusted starts to blur. And this is what's caused challenges. If you are now only protecting those four walls and assuming users are within those four walls, when you start to extend beyond those four walls, the network and security starts to break down. So there's really four challenges that this presents. When you move into this kind of modern architecture where the data center is no longer your perimeter, you start to have to protect more than just that one trusted and untrusted zone. So in this case, you can see that now we've gone beyond the data center. You can start, let's say, putting out firewalls in different places, putting out, let's say, VPNs in different places to give people access who are not in your data, not in your local area network. And what that actually creates is an attack surface. So think about everything that's exposed in your environment, from your public applications, maybe some private applications, virtual firewalls, physical outbound firewalls, VPN gateways. If they have a public IP address, they can be found. And if they can be found, that means they're reachable. If they're reachable, that means they're breachable. So that's number one. That's the first challenge that you have, is that if you have an attack surface, attackers can find you. Now, if they can find you, that means that there's a chance of compromise. What we've all seen through the whole Ivanti issue with the Ivanti Pulse Secure VPNs having these issues that need to be continuously patched. Anytime there's any public exposure, there's a risk of compromise. And so this is 0 days, malware, command and control, botnets. They can be used to get some access into your environment, and ultimately infect users, devices, and workloads. Once you get in, once a compromise happens, and we've seen this kind of attack chain in so many different circumstances. Anytime you read about a breach, they always take the same path. The second you get compromised, at that point, attackers can move laterally. So imagine if you're on a network, most networks are pretty flat. You can run an Nmap and basically see what's exposed on that network. And so if you look at the Uber breach or the Maersk breach, the Colonial Pipeline breach, they've all worked in the same manner, where someone got a foothold, they moved laterally, found crown jewels, and ultimately what most attackers are after, either to disrupt operations or to steal data. They are able to find the data and ultimately exfiltrate the data, encrypt the data and hold it for ransom, which is ultimately the end goal. So if these are the four things that we're most concerned about, really, where does zero trust fit in? How does zero trust actually get rid of those four issues that lead to most of these breaches that we see in the wild? So first and foremost, if you think about the attack surface, think about kind of the old days where we used to get, yellow pages, white pages delivered to our door. I could look up a name and find someone's published telephone number. So in this case, think about Chris is trying to call Amy. Her number is published. He can call her. But think about that also meant that any unwanted caller can call Amy as well. So think about now what zero trust would do. In a zero trust architecture, what you would have would be a smart switchboard, if you will, sitting in between Chris and Amy. Amy's number itself would be completely unpublished, so there'd be no record of her number to the public. And if a wanted caller came in, the smart switchboard would authorize it. If an unwanted caller came in, that same smart switchboard would intercept it, block it from ever getting to Amy. And this is exactly how zero trust works. We call this the zero trust exchange, but think of it as a smart switchboard that sits in between users, unwanted users, and your most sensitive applications, providing this smart switching capability so that anything that you want goes through policy, and everything that you don't gets blocked. Now, what about other implications of zero trust architecture? Let's take another example. Let's say, for example, I was a visitor in your office. Now, under traditional architecture or legacy architecture, you'd likely have a receptionist sitting at the front door of your building. Your building would be visible from the street. And I would come in, I would likely show my ID, I'd be assigned a room. I'd be able to freely go to that room. Maybe there'd be a metal detector there, but freely go to that room, have my meeting. But I'd also be able to look around. Look at room number 21, look at room number 19. I'd be able to see other wings of your offices. I could maybe leave something behind, a spy device. Maybe I could pick up a file and leave with it. And ultimately, traditional architecture lets you do that. It lets you move laterally within a building with minimal controls put in place. Now, think about the same effect in a zero trust architecture. The first thing that happens is the receptionist and the front desk is completely air-gapped from your building. Your building is now underground, so it's no longer visible from the street. And I'll still come and present my ID, because of course identity is very important, but in this case I'll be blindfolded, so I really won't know what room I'm going to. And on the way in, my bags will be searched for dangerous material. And on the way out, there'll be no loitering. My bags will be checked for stolen goods, and I'll be on my way. And this is, again, exactly how zero trust architecture works. Your sensitive items are essentially hidden, but the ability, once I'm in, is really just to provide access to what I'm authorized for without any risk of lateral movement. So, kind of putting it in a very graphical term, we're moving away from this concept of implicit trust to this concept of zero trust. Really, it's just about having least privilege access to what's absolutely necessary for that employee to do business. So, in terms of what it does, we kind of break it into three different categories. The first step of zero trust is to verify identity and context. What that means is that, number one, we have to figure out who the person is, the user is, or even the workload or the device, what it is, and what context they're coming in from. Number two, we have to control the content itself and the level of access through policy. And then finally, actually enforce that policy. So to break that into kind of a step-by-step flow, think about a user, device, a workload, let's say a thing that sits on at the edge of the internet somewhere. And let's say they want to access an application, either an internet app, a SaaS app, and an internal application. So they would make a request. The request would be intercepted by the zero trust exchange. Now, typically it's done through an agent that sits on the endpoint device, maybe a tunnel, but the zero trust platform will intercept it. The first thing it's going to ask is, who are you? And this is where there'll be some integration with identity provider to provide the understanding through SAML of who that user actually is. But then it will understand the what, where, and more, right? So am I on a managed device? Am my managed device up to par? Do I have the right operating system? Do I have the right browser? Do I have the right security controls on my endpoint device? That's context. At that point, it will start to control content and access. And this is where the same zero trust exchange will inspect traffic. And this is, we use various forms of SSL TLS decryption to look inside the packet to make sure nothing bad is coming in. But on the reverse path, anything sensitive is coming out. And you can control access this way by inspecting traffic, but also control access by looking at policy. And this is where you have ability to set very granular application policies between the users and the application they absolutely need to access without giving any user network level access, really just overlay access to the application itself. And once that's done is the enforcement phase. And this is where either the Zero Trust Exchange will allow access if everything checks out, block access, but also maybe there's a allow and caution. Maybe there's a browser isolation. Maybe it does prioritization, or maybe if there's a chance that there's a stolen credential, it does a deception and moves it to a honeypot. So these are all different things that the Zero Trust Exchange can do to ultimately give access or not give access to that end user. And on the case of private applications, there's an inside-out connection created so that there really is no attack surface at that endpoint, at the application side. All of these are kind of the fundamentals of Zero Trust architecture in order to minimize the attack surface, prevent lateral movement, and prevent compromise and data loss. Now, if you compare that with what would happen in a traditional firewall VPN type of environment, the same request would happen, but it would go straight through the application, right? Because in these cases, there's network level access given to these users. Now, of course, there are some protections in place, but often since these are pass-through architectures, the protections are often not that effective in reducing breaches. So real quickly, just to kind of set the stage on how does the industry look at all these things that I'm talking about. So you might hear about acronyms called SSE and SASE. These basically stand for Secure Access Service Edge or Security Service Edge, and really are part of how Gartner defines how Zero Trust is implemented from an architectural perspective. Basically saying these service edges are essentially POPs in the cloud that sit close to where the users are and provide all of these services. So think about something like SSE provides web gateway services, CASB, firewall, all these different factors sitting on top of a Zero Trust architecture. So Zero Trust is the basis as the architectural element that provides the services that a Gartner would call SSE or SASE. So given all this, let's get to the crux of really what are the business benefits of what we're talking about. So really we can break the business elements into several different categories. And the first and foremost, the most obvious one is around enhanced security posture and compliance, right? Having a cloud native, smart switchboard, if you will, checking all these connections, inspecting the packets, making sure there's nothing bad, blocking sensitive data from leaving, really results in a massive, massive increase in security over traditional hardware-based appliances or direct connection and not providing any security controls at all, as you can imagine. In fact, you see our clients saying there's massive reduction in successful ransomware, reduction in risk of data breach just by implementing this type of technology. But this is kind of the obvious benefit is the enhanced risk. But think about some of the other things that can happen, right? In terms of technology costs, think about how much is being spent today on hardware appliances from, let's say, 5, 6, 7 different vendors that have to be managed. The cost of the appliances, especially given supply chain issues, how much those technologies actually cost to implement and upgrade. Not to mention the cost of waiting for cards to come in, upgrading certain cards to get the new latest features. All of that really goes away. You're taking that entire security stack and moving it into a cloud-hosted environment. So there's a massive saving from a technology cost perspective. Now, on top of that, think about also operational efficiencies. When you have now not having to manage 7 different vendors, your secure web gateway vendor, your VPN vendor, your DLP vendor, your AV vendor, your all these different vendors that have to be managed independently with employees that have very specific understanding of those specific environments. Once those start to go away, you can really start to get some massive operational efficiencies by really having to basically master just one platform, which is going to be that Zero Trust cloud. Now, on top of that, there's also a massive user experience difference. One thing we didn't talk about too much is really some of the issues with having a security architecture that's still tied to your data center. And this is basically this concept of hairpinning or backhauling. If, for example, I am sitting at home and I need to access the internet, what a lot of organizations would still do in the old environment would be having to backhaul all that traffic back to a central location where the security stack sits and then send me out to the internet. Now, I live in Washington, D.C., and I'm close to probably the biggest concentration of data centers in the world for a few miles from my home. In this environment, if I wasn't kind of having this new modern networking environment, and my company, which is based in California, I'd be backhauling all my traffic all the way across the country just to go out to internet sites likely hosted a few miles from my home. So in a zero trust environment, think about these service edges being really hundreds of locations around the world close to where all the users are. And so all these security services are provided from the edge, close to where the users are, giving you a significant improvement or reduction in network latency instead of going and backhauling all that traffic. Now, one of the kind of interesting side benefits of all this, everything we've spoken about, and I mentioned several times about not connecting users to actual networks, what you're really doing is creating network overlays. So this whole concept of IP addressing or overlapping IPs really becomes a moot point, and this becomes especially helpful when thinking about mergers and acquisitions, or even divestitures for that matter, where a lot of IT teams spend months, if not quarters, figuring out how to bring different organizations together because of the complexities that happen at layer 2, layer 3. All of that, or much of that, will go away in this type of environment, given that now you are again, not connecting users to networks, but rather creating these overlays. And finally, last one, as you move things to the cloud, we are moving toward carbon neutrality, but there's also a huge environmental savings as well. So real quick, one of the things to mention, just as a quick dashboard of kind of what we've been talking about, but think about being able to look at these 4 areas: your attack surface, risk of compromise, lateral propagation, data loss, and be able to track and understand the risk caused by these 4 areas, but also be able to see them and use some of these zero trust technologies to mitigate these risks. So a couple other points to make on the last couple of minutes. Remember, zero trust is not really just a technology. It's really a framework. It's a way of thinking. There's this process involved, but it does require technology in addition to progressive leadership that needs to push this. It is certainly a transformation to go down this path, and it requires conviction and it requires knowledge. And so it's not just about pushing a button on the technology side, but really kind of a political, cultural mindset change as well. So just a second on kind of what we've been talking about. So we've been talking about the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange. We provide, as we talked about, cyber threat protection, data protection. We've been doing a lot of interesting AI/ML-based services based upon the knowledge of the trillions of daily signals that we see, all built on a core of zero trust networking that basically uses over 150 data centers around the world to provide this globally distributed cloud that can provide security for users' workloads, business to business, and IoT, OT. And no zero trust environment is really alone, or SSC environment. It really requires an ecosystem of best of breed platforms. So you can see here the API integrations we have with many of our partners from the identity space, from the endpoint space, from the network space, the operation space, et cetera, to build this ecosystem to provide defense in depth. So with all that being said, we'll take some questions and answer, and we'll do some Q&A. But if this piqued your interest, you want to learn more, feel free to download one of these books that we've written on this topic, as well to go to our website, zscaler.com, for further information. But we'd love to take some Q&A now.
All right. Thank you so much, Sanjit. Yes, let's hop into Q&A in just a sec. I know you have to take off, actually, so I'm excited to pick Jacob's brain. Jacob is the Senior Portfolio Marketing Manager at Zscaler. Jacob, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, thanks. How about yourself?
Yeah, fantastic. The great EcoCast here, great lineup. Thanks for kicking things off with the Zscaler team.
Absolutely. Very excited to be here for this conversation.
Fantastic. Before I pose my first audience question to you, I just want to point out to everyone in the audience, I do have a poll up. So basically just looking to get your feedback on any additional resources that you'd like from Zscaler. Your feedback, of course, is very valuable, and you're going to get exactly what you're looking for, whether it be pricing details, data sheets, a personal demo. So take a little bit of time to do that now. And with that, okay, first question coming your way, Jacob. The first question is about AI, and someone in the audience here, Patrick, is wondering, how does Zscaler use AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the short answer is in a lot of different ways. I think there are 2 main buckets, if you will, of AI-powered solutions that we provide. One of them has to do with reducing risk. So we use AI as an example to scrutinize the context of every access attempt for every user workload, so on and so forth, like Sanjit was saying. So, with that, we also have a bunch of other security capabilities like AI-powered cloud sandboxing, browser isolation. I mean, I don't want to get into too much of a feature list there, but we stop threats and we protect data in a lot of really cool ways. AI just making sure that it's as automated and as intelligent and as streamlined as possible for our customers. But there are also things that we do for that second bucket, which is, we'll say, optimizing your organization. So we have business analytics where, we can help you identify the SaaS apps that, you might not need the volume of licenses that you have. They're not being used that widely. We can help you understand the footprint of your users coming to the office and working remotely, and when they access and how they access the campus and all these kinds of things. So you can make business decisions, basically. Also AI-powered root cause analysis for digital experience monitoring. So a lot of different things there. That's just kind of a quick overview.
Nice. I've got a question here from Jason. He's asking, can Zscaler work with existing firewalls, or is it hardware agnostic?
Yeah, so good question. So first of all, if you have a zero trust architecture in place, then you're going to be able to eliminate tools like firewalls, like VPNs. So, that's kind of the goal, is not necessarily to just plug this in as one more lever into your status quo, but rather to truly transform. Now, that said, yes, we can work with your existing firewalls. There are organizations that like to use zero trust architecture and some of their more legacy type tools in parallel as they, just try to get more comfortable with zero trust. So the answer to the question is yes, but also we should be oriented towards a broader transformation, at least over time.
Yeah, I have another similar question here. So maybe just to flush it out and dispel any queries, this is, do I need to replace everything we have for zero trust? So it sounds like you can work with existing infrastructure, but maybe, if you want to go a little further with that.
Yeah, that's a perfect 1-2 combo for that question. So the short answer is no. You don't have to rip everything up in your environment and reinvent the universe to start using zero trust. In fact, I would say most of our customers probably start off with having a zero trust architecture and their more traditional perimeter-based architecture operating in parallel. And so sometimes that'll be, we just want to secure web access with zero trust architecture, or maybe this subset of private apps with a zero trust architecture, or just our IoT and OT devices. So lots of different ways you can cut it. But yeah, customers will sometimes start with, using zero trust architecture for certain use cases and continuing to use their other tools for other use cases. But that said, most customers don't stay there. There is a trajectory that we see with the vast majority of our customers where once they have a zero trust architecture, in securing basically anything, they slowly realize, hey, this is actually the better way of doing things. And so over time, they move more and more towards embracing that zero trust architecture in a systematic fashion that reduces and eliminates the use of those legacy type tools.
Okay, nice, excellent. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one, so let's see what you have to say. This one is just curious. Zero trust is understood by technologists, but organizations must get their end users to become collaborators and know what zero trust is and means for them. So essentially, can you shed some light on how you might go about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's important because security is typically seen as the people who say no. And so, when you talk about having this new security architecture and this new solution in place and these kinds of things, I think users can be like, okay, how much harder is it going to be to do my job? So the good news is with zero trust architecture, it's a completely different way of doing things. You're not going to be backhauling traffic. You're not going to be routing, your users' traffic and what they're doing through box after box or tool after tool. Rather, it's this global zero trust cloud that is delivering least privileged connectivity as a service at the edge. And so you have security and connectivity provided from as close to the end user as possible, not backhauling traffic to some distant data center. And also, if you have a zero trust architecture with Zscaler, we have built-in digital experience monitoring, so we can make sure the user experience is as optimal as possible. And that includes, some of the AI-based root cause analysis type stuff that I alluded to earlier, where if there is a user experience problem, help desk can just press a button and figure out the root cause, with the click of a button. So really powerful stuff. So I think the main thing to communicate to users is, hey, this is not going to mean a worse experience for you. In fact, it's actually going to improve your user experience once you have this proven platform like Zscaler in place that's proven to scale, proven to perform, and provide security as a service at the edge. And I think that delivering that at the edge is really key there, instead of backhauling traffic. So that's the kind of quick answer to that one.
Amazing. I think we're basically out of time, but I usually like to ask, what should people do? Where should they go? Or a key takeaway before you take off. But I also had someone ask in the audience, what differentiates Zscaler from other companies who promote zero trust? So I'm giving you your mic drop moment here, Jacob.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. So I think the key thing is there's a lot of dilution of what zero trust is. So when we think of zero trust, think of an architecture. Don't think of just one more tool or one more appliance or something to, stick into the status quo. It's a fundamentally different way of doing things. And so you get this transformational level change in your security and networking architecture that gives you far better security, reduced risk, and then a whole bunch of other benefits that Sanjit described, like, increased savings, increased productivity for your end users, and so on and so forth. So when you're thinking about zero trust, you need to think of a full architecture, not an appliance, not some other tool. And you want to make sure it's a proven platform like Zscaler, where, we're a strong financially traded company, or financially viable company, publicly traded. And we are used to scaling for the world's largest organizations at the drop of a hat, with hundreds of thousands and even millions of users for certain organizations. So go with the proven platform, and you want it to be an architecture, not a solution.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to let you go, but great to have you and Sanjit on today.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Alrighty. Well, if you do want to follow up quickly, I know this is our first presentation of the day. If you haven't already been over to the handouts tab, which is in the same box as the questions, go check out. We've got handouts from every single team presenting. Right now with Zscaler, you have a link to their ebook, 7 Elements of Highly Successful Zero Trust Architecture. So check that out. And beyond that, I have a prize to give away, the first of 3 $300 Amazon gift cards. Again, you must be present and live here at the webinar to win. So without further ado, our first lucky winner on the webinar today is Johnny Choi from South Carolina. Congratulations, Johnny. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And don't forget, there are still 2 more chances to win an Amazon gift card today, plus the best question gift card from each session. So keep those questions coming on in. But for now, let's keep zipping right along and jump into our next presentation here on the EcoCast. Next up in our star-studded lineup, I have Robert Arandyolovic. Hopefully I did say that correctly. I think I nailed it, Robert. Robert is the Director of Solutions Marketing at Netscope. Robert, I'm just so excited to have you here today and having you presenting on Zero Trust. Robert, are you ready to take things on here?
Indeed. Thank you so much. And you nailed my name, so I'm appreciating that. We're off to a good start.
All right, we'll take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. So again, I'm Robert Aranjelovich. Looking forward to speaking to you guys today. You're going to be hearing a lot of really interesting opinions on Zero Trust, and you're going to see a lot of overlap. We got a lot of things in common, both in terms of how we interpret Zero Trust and how the things that you as organization should approach it. But you're also going to see some different conversations being had. And that was one of the balanced approaches I wanted to take today was we're going to talk a lot about applying zero trust principles and some of the things to be aware of there. But one of the key things that we want to do is look at zero trust within a balanced approach and how you deploy zero trust while realizing that solving the security problem that zero trust ultimately seeks to address is just one piece of the puzzle nowadays. So as we go forward, kind of look a little bit at the climate we have around us and why we as SSE and SASE providers are so focused on the zero trust challenge. And it's because for a lot of our customers and a lot of organizations out there, the cloud dilemma in terms of where you look at a lot of where traffic is going today, 60% of all traffic is SaaS based. And 50% of the threats that our labs have uncovered are happening actually within SaaS applications or cloud apps. That's a big change from the past where the web tended to dominate a lot and websites tended to be the primary point of compromise. Data theft is a particularly acute issue. A lot of it tends to happen with different instances and personal cloud storage being an avenue for 74% of all data theft incidents. There's been a 300% increase of data theft at the end of employment. And everyone's familiar with the situation where somebody leaves their old job, takes their library of assets and materials to their new job, and obviously poses a significant risk. The proliferation of cloud instances there makes that even more daunting. And to kind of deal with a lot of this, we've seen our security architectures kind of explode in the number of tools that are out there. And so based on a recent stat we pulled down, we recognized that a typical organization, and this is actually not even the larger organizations, but just a typical organization is running approximately 76 different security tools. Clearly, that's resulting in a lot of complexity and cost. And as things evolve and as we kind of try and solve the next problems we see, it's simply at risk of spiraling out of control. So in that context, we go back to zero trust and how are we trying to kind of deal with it? Clearly, the first and most important aspect of zero trust is finding a way to reduce risk, improving behaviors and hygiene, preventing data leakage and third-party risk, and improving the security posture. Now, zero trust, by eliminating implicit trust and moving to a more balanced approach, is dealing with that. But what we've learned is there used to be a tug of war between security departments being able to say risk reduction is paramount and everything else sort of falls in its wake, or networking organization or networking leaders or IT leaders basically saying, actually, what we need to focus on is agility and making sure our workers are enabled by technology and empowered, or cost and making sure that we have a nice consolidated infrastructure where operations are working at their peak without an excessive cost or complexity for our workforce. What we've seen is that no single individual goal is paramount anymore. Now, you could say that risk is most important in our organization, but it can no longer come at the cost of the others. And so zero trust is no exception to this. Even if risk reduction is its ultimate, is the ultimate goal, being able to do so in a manner that doesn't compromise the productivity of the workforce and decision-making, things like application adoption or mergers and acquisitions, or adding complexity in order to reduce risk is no longer an option either. So this is something we have to go forward with. And what does that balanced approach mean when it comes to security? It means we're kind of weighing different things together. We're looking at the flexibility and the power of the workforce versus the protection of the workforce, experimenting versus minimizing risk, or creating an agile organization that can do everything it needs to do versus a more measured, centralized decision-making process where we have also IT oversight and security oversight over everything. What we've learned, after speaking to a number of our customers, is that it's no longer possible to kind of say these are versus things. Now what we're seeing is there's an area where we need to compromise and actually make sure that you have a flexible workforce and a protected workforce, that you can experiment at speed and minimize risk, that you can have agile and fast decision-making as well as centralized decision-making. Some quotes here that we're looking at, I've just kind of highlighted some of the key elements here, and these are actual customers of ours and CAB members of ours, advisory board members of ours that have actually weighed in and talking about the fact of that, achieving a 0% risk profile is obviously not something you can do, but weighing up and making a balanced approach is really the only way forward when it comes to delivering security and zero trust. Allowing innovation is critical. And what's kind of counterintuitive to some older lines of thinking is that the granular controls that come from zero trust principles actually can enable that innovation if done properly, and making it so that you provide guardrails, or in this case, safety breaks, where again, organizations are able to access the resources they need to do at speed with minimal latency, but at the same time, ensuring that security is there to ensure that they don't kind of go off piste and potentially increase security risk while doing so. And the resulting piece, I think the previous speaker spoke to the idea of InfoSec no longer being the department of no. And so one of our CISO advocates had basically said that zero trust principles, in fact, can kind of work the opposite way. And they enable the behaviors that CISOs wish that they could have been exhibited all the time, of basically being the department of yes, you can, with conditions. And so these are kind of the ways we're looking to kind of achieve this balance. So when it comes to zero trust itself, how are we trying to go about things? So now there are a few things that we sort of want to carry forward. And when we discuss some of the principles, we're going to want to base them on these ideas of assuming a breach. And when we're looking at our security architectures, assuming that the worst case scenarios can happen or have happened, how do you work backwards and identify gaps or insufficiencies in our security infrastructure to ensure that we need to patch up various controls to ensure that those things don't happen again? And most important when we think of zero trust specifically is let's start at zero and move away from this idea of implicit trust where an authenticated user inherently has access to everything that is behind that authentication wall and move to a continuous adaptive trust model. And what that basically means then is ensuring that explicitly you can allow a granular level of access to resources so that you're minimizing security risk while ensuring that the things that users are or individuals are authorized to access can do so at speed. How do you achieve that risk? Because this is all about context. Basically, when we're looking at the yes with conditions concept, what we're effectively trying to do is get signals from all these different aspects, from users, from devices that are being used, the time of day and the time of week, locations, as well as the data and application sensitivity, and looking really at like what kind of behaviors kind of add up when you look at all of these things in conjunction, so that you have different scenarios whereas a fully authenticated user using a managed device on a local network at the right time of day will have a much less restricted level of access to certain resources than they would if they were using, for instance, a jailbroken iPhone at 4 o'clock in the morning from someplace in Southeast Asia. Now, that will obviously dictate that even if it's the same user credentials logging in, you've got to be able to kind of control for a different level of access. Now, the key thing when we look at zero trust architectures and when we're kind of evaluating the different tools we've got in place, as well as the tools we're considering, is how well can I take not just these signals, but a number of other signals to build up a rich contextual story of my user so that I can actually allocate the right level of access in a continuous adaptive manner. Now, the key thing what we see is that lacking this context, and this is really where we're going to see a limitation in a number of the controls that we've got in place in our security architectures, are going to have coarse-grained policies that aren't able to actually understand all of this information. And we'll talk about an example about this later on. And so they're ineffective for delivering zero trust and that least privileged access level of security, but they're also disruptive to user productivity because you're basically forced into allow or deny decisions, which either allow everything and compromise your security, or deny everything and cripple productivity. So the first step and a first principle we're looking to do is kind of try and find the right way to eliminate implicit trust. Many architectures, if you think of VPN as a classic example, work on the trust then verify model, which is basically we're going to basically let the user onto the network and to access applications, and we'll verify their access after the fact. Lots of lateral movement can take place in this environment. Basically, you have an unrestricted access being given to the network before they've even actually tried to access a particular application resource. Where we want to move towards is something like this, where the first step you take is verify and then trust as far as access to any particular data or application resource, and then provide a proper assessment of all of the different contextual signals that we talked about in order to determine that verification. It's no longer just a username and password type of situation, but you're assessing a lot more when you're deciding whether or not to actually verify that that user should have trust. And so it's a cyclical process that continues on and on. So as we shift to continuous adaptive trust, again, this becomes the volume knob, if you will, on the level of trust and therefore the level of access we should be providing in any particular situation. The beauty of this continuous model is that it ensures that zero trust principles can be applied on a scale where, again, say a user comes in a particular safe managed device scenario, and then they switch over to a phone that's not trusted, or in a situation where a user is basically got their antivirus or their endpoint protection enabled, and then they turn it off. We should be able to continuously assess so that we can decide that we verify and tweak down the level of trust based on whatever changes may happen. Making that possible, though, is also an important element, which is within continuous adaptive trust, which is adaptive access. So as I said, at this point, many tools work on an allow or deny or all or nothing basis. You either have access, and therefore we give you full unrequited access, or you have none. Now, the challenge is, what about the in-between? What if the level of trust that we've assessed based on all of the different signals suggests that maybe full access isn't right in this scenario? Something can be off on any one of those signals that we talked about, and therefore we need a more granular approach to what the access that you can get. You can have your allow or deny or your permit or deny, but how about restricted access, or redirecting to further authentication, or coaching to suggest that in this particular scenario, because you're accessing something that's maybe outside of policy, we should advise you that this is maybe not the right thing to do, and maybe advise you maybe to go to use a different cloud application, or to turn your antivirus back on, or things to that effect. And so on a per application or per transaction basis, being able to actually configure this access based on your continuous adaptive trust model is going to be critical. The second major principle we want to talk to is to think like an attacker. And again, work backwards from the idea, again, of breach, think through the entire process and find gaps, whether it's in the detection, the response, or the prevention of those attacks, putting in the right controls or changing your policies so that they can help prevent that attack to happen in the new perspective. The new mindset basically focuses on shrinking attack surfaces, limiting the blast radius of any particular successful attack, constraining lateral movement, so ensuring that if a user has gotten access to a particular application or network, that their ability to kind of move across and explore and basically compromise other assets that they may not have been granted explicit access to is limited. And we use constrain here instead of contain, because what we're really speaking to is the idea that at the end, there are so many different connections. Like one application might have an API back into another application, which gives a user unrecognized or implicit access to a different application. So what we're trying to do is put as many controls in place as possible to ensure that that lateral movement is challenged along the way, and that further assessment, security assessment, takes place so that that movement is more difficult and limited. And finally, improving threat response by improving the tools and the collaboration across those tools to be able to actually identify an attack and stop it in its tracks. So to do this, we look at delivering a zero trust platform. And again, we're looking at this from a perspective of balance. How can we achieve the cost and complexity reductions while reducing risk and delivering a superior user experience that ensures optimal agility? Now, a platform is the model you want to work to, because basically this product sprawl that we were talking about before, 76 different security products and growing within a typical organization, needs to be able to address all of these things. And this is where the potential for further growth is dangerous. And again, I apologize, for some reason, the text at the bottom here attributing this architecture to Forrester is not there, so I apologize. But again, you have data, you have networks, you have workloads, you have users and identities, and you have devices. All of these things require a whole set of different capabilities and controls. One of the things I've come to learn in my time in the security industry is that there isn't a single platform, no matter what some people might argue or market themselves as doing. There's no single platform on the market today or coming anytime soon that will be able to address zero trust consistently and adequately across all of these vectors. The reality is a zero trust platform is really a platform of platforms. Oh, and I guess this was the wrong slide. I apologize. So zero trust is really a conglomeration of 4 different platform components. At the top here, you see an orchestration layer, which will be founded by SIEM and SOAR tools to provide all of the higher level conglomeration of your different platforms. But underneath that, you'll see EDR and XDR being one component that provides it, SASE and SSE, where Netscope tends to play, being the element that covers beyond the device level and looks at the cloud, the web, and private applications. And then you have your identity and access management. Now, it is possible to create a zero trust platform based on these sub platforms. And it's kind of like if you think of a car, on a car platform sort of being built on you have a chassis and all the ecosystem that's built around that. You'll have an electronic platform or an entertainment platform, and you'll have different platforms that sort of come together to build that driving experience. And the same thing applies here to zero trust. And so what we're providing here is sort of guidance on kind of the key building blocks you want to have. Now, when we get to SASE and we drill down, here's an idea of what we offer from Netscope's Netscope One platform. We have a unified platform that provides that consistent access, zero trust access to unmanaged and managed SaaS applications, web, as well as private applications, whether they're hosted in data centers or in the cloud. Going through all of these, you have the zero trust engine, a single point of enforcement, a single policy enforcement point through which all zero trust decisions are made. So users and devices and all the different entities that are going to be accessing information or application resources go through this zero trust engine. So you have a consistent enforcement. How does that look when it comes to context? This zero trust engine itself is gathering all of this contextual data in real time. And based on that is able to basically scale and pick out identity, device, location, application, instance of cloud applications, activities, behaviors, and the actual trust level of the data. And within 15 milliseconds, this thing is a blazing fast tool, we're able to provide verdicts and continuously assess any particular transaction based on all of these criteria. It decrypts all traffic also, so it ensures that you don't have to kind of bypass certain types of traffic, because if all traffic isn't being put through this policy enforcement engine, you are creating significant security vulnerabilities, even if you're depending on that security being provided by another provider. But just as importantly as the speed or the comprehensiveness of the protection we're delivering here, you need to have empowerment. And this is where the user experience comes through. And like, as I mentioned before about that adaptive access model, being able to not just allow or block, but to provide other elements that can allow people to go through with their jobs and be able to perform their functions by accessing the resources they need in a conditional manner is critical to enabling this. And the Zero Trust Engine also enables that. So by providing this single engine and policy enforcement point across all the different resources, we can achieve that. Now, how does that look? When it comes to basically a previous traditional model, and this is again where we have these coarse-grained tools, and when we look at, or if you evaluate the security tools you have in place and you're trying to do zero trust, it's very difficult to start from zero and build out a comprehensive trust model if this is the extent of the context that you're being given, where you can basically see a URL potentially and a category, maybe do some basic security inspection, have some basic DLP in place, and then either allow or block. This is our seriously coarse-grained policy, which is going to really limit the amount of zero trust. You're either going to overblock and impact productivity, or you're going to underblock and raise security risk. Now, when it comes to that versus the power of continuous adaptive trust, you look at all the different levels of rich context that you can deliver here. And the policy engine built on this is able to actually create fine-grained, super precise policies that allow you to basically deliver just the amount of continuous adaptive trust and security, while also then being able to deliver like a nice adaptive policy based on all of that, which can allow you to ensure that users can get the job done. Here you see an example of a coaching response where a user, based on all the different criteria we've seen before, is given basically the prompt through a coaching to basically justify their usage or be blocked. So through this, what we look at is the way to achieve that sort of balance. By having a fast, comprehensive, precise, and empowering zero trust implementation in the cloud, we can achieve the ability to ensure business agility, reduce risk within the organization, and streamline deployment to ensure minimal costs and complexity. So I want to thank you. I'm not sure how I did on time, but I hope we have a little time for Q&A, and I'll pass it back.
Absolutely. Yes, we do have time for Q&A for you, so no stress on that. I'm going to throw up a poll just quickly here. So everyone in the audience who is curious to learn more, get some more resources from Netscope, hit the poll here and you will be able to get exactly what you're looking for from the Netscope team. And with that, Robert, are you set for the first question?
Sure thing.
Okay. First one here I have is, how do you qualify if you have a platform or just a bunch of integrated products?
Right, that's a good question, because I think the debate came up. Actually, it was David Holmes from Forrester that really lit this up for me, was because he had a discussion about what a platform is versus a portfolio, and it was interesting because he talked about things like having a back end with a payment mechanism, and I think when you're talking about a commercial platform, that is definitely some of the things you want to talk to. But the way I look at it is, a platform is effectively a single base. And again, I use my car platform as an example of this, a single base that allows a more efficient deployment of multiple functionalities and iterations of capabilities. So when it comes to a zero trust platform, effectively having that common baseline of policy and contextual analysis, and then being able to roll out different controls. So if I want to roll out zero trust network access to replace my VPN, I can put that piece through. And not have to kind of reinvent the wheel then when I decide later on, actually, I want better access to my SaaS applications and secured access to my SaaS applications as well. So basically having it so that you're getting a consistent baseline of capabilities that can be added to. The third party element kind of comes in sometimes when you talk about policy or platforms as well, and having the ability to enable that. And that's something, for instance, in our platform we do, and many zero trust platforms, you're going to want to look to ensure that there is the ability to integrate. Because as you looked at the model I had, there was sort of a platform of platforms. So as a baseline, you want to ensure that a SASE platform, for instance, can seamlessly integrate and exchange threat information and other types of security policy with an XDR platform or through IAM. And those are minimal levels. But there's also going to be other aspects of the security landscape, whether it's a threat intelligence feed or whether it's an IoT security tool or anything else, that there are the capabilities from an API backend to ensure that you can enhance your security that way. And that's another element that makes up a platform. But effectively, it is that idea of scale and delivering security and solutions at scale, because security is constantly evolving. And if you don't have the ability to build out and expand beyond just the purpose of that particular solution set that you've bought into, then you don't have a platform. You basically just have certain products that are going to require extensive reinventing of the wheel, and as well as extensive integration work on the behalf of the customer that we don't want.
Amazing. Okay, great answer. Next question coming in hot. This is, how do I prioritize if I have a conflict between security and performance?
Right. Now that's going to differ a lot in terms of organizations. So you're going to see some organizations that, again, zero trust is the mandate. That's what needs to be done. The reality, I would say, is almost first and foremost, though, is you can't fully compromise in the sense of sort of negating one. Investing in an architecture and really reading the speeds and feeds of one to ensure that the other is met is kind of critical. So if I'm looking at my security tools and my security landscape, keeping a keen eye on things like latency, on peering relationships and access, on also the empowerment of the policy. So ensuring that that my users can actually optimally perform their job is critical. If agility and ensuring, and this is kind of what happened actually during the pandemic, for instance, where basically my users need access to all of these applications from home to be able to do their jobs. And as an IT director or as a CIO, I'm going to lose my job if that's not possible. The idea of circumventing security controls is also not an option. So I would say the compromise is whatever your key priority may be, and that whatever the weighting might be, you obviously stick with that. But essentially, it's no longer an or decision. It's an and decision nowadays, where you have to be able to look at the other end, and whatever weighting you give to it is adequate. But you got to make sure that the other stakeholders in the room, whether they're security or networking, are also satisfied.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. Okay, I think I have time for one final question for you. This one I kind of like. They say, I noticed that you don't have firewall as part of your zero trust platform. Why is that?
So that's interesting, because I know that came up in the previous session as well. And the only reason we discuss it is, so again, it's completely acceptable to build a zero trust architecture with firewalling. And again, many organizations, it's the one, I always call it one of the desert island technologies. Every security architecture is going to have a firewall in place. And it's a perfectly acceptable architecture to kind of base things on having a firewall in there. And when we look at Netscope and our platform, we do offer significant integration capabilities and benefits for incorporating a network firewall at the edge of the network, as well as having a SASE implementation to govern access as you're out on the cloud or actually outside of the scope of the firewall. So, but why we kind of considered it not part of the core architecture is that it is possible to design a zero trust architecture without it, because the predominance of traffic actually occurs between users and basically the outside world now, the internet or cloud applications. And again, that's what the firewall is literally governing. You can actually govern it through an agent model where every one of those users is actually accessing their resources, and simply the point of enforcement is now in the cloud and through a SASE architecture, or it can be governed at the endpoint in the case of EDR. And so with that, and I think the previous speaker kind of spoke to this as well, is that you now have the ability to sort of negate the criticality of the firewall in a lot of use cases when it comes to zero trust.
Excellent. Beautiful. I think that is all the time we have for today, but I do want to give our last speaker a mic drop moment, which I kind of like the sound of that. So anything you want to leave the audience with here, Robert?
Sure thing. Yeah. So as I said, I think ensuring that when you're doing zero trust, you are kind of addressing that balance. What you're going to find is the ability to win approval and support at the executive level for your zero trust project will be significantly enhanced. Reducing security risk and the need, like cybersecurity is a boardroom issue. So it's pretty easy to gain a mandate for that. But when it comes to a large zero trust project, being able to say that I'm going to actually address the security challenge and the risk challenge, but at the same time, I'm going to make it so our users are more secure and more empowered than they were in the past. Their performance will be better. And additionally, I'm going to help consolidate our security architecture and save significant costs, both in terms of operational efforts as well as actual overall hardware cost and being able to retire solutions. That's how you win. So taking a balanced approach to this is critical. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, getting this zero trust project, not just from the approval phase, but to the completion phase and winning over all the people that you need to support is the only way it's going to work. So I would say always emphasize the balance and identify solutions, something like what we offer, which can help you address that by having a solution that's highly performant, that is efficient and completely consolidated while being comprehensive, and also offers the optimal level of security control.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. So excited to have you here. Hope to have you back soon.
Much appreciated.
With
Thank
that,
you so
I
much.
will let you go. Take care, Robert. Alrighty. So if you do want to learn more right away about Netscope, of course, we've got that poll up. I'm going to move it in a few seconds, so get your answers in if you haven't answered already. But that said, in the handouts tab, you'll also have a solution brief, Netscope's one platform. It's short, it's snappy, it's 3-4 pages, and it's got a link embedded in there to book a demo if that feels right for you. So check that out, and with that, we'll keep today's show on the road. Next up on the EcoCast, we have a 2-presenter team bringing us a timely and practical bit of information about zero trust and its top use cases. From Cisco, we have both Wolfgang Gerlich, the advisory CISO for Duo Security, and Sandy Hawk, the senior product marketing manager for zero trust at Cisco. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to you, Wolfgang and Sandy. Floor is yours.
Hi, thanks so much. We're so excited that you're here to join us to talk through some of the top zero trust use cases. And we see these falling into identity, access, and response sort of use cases. Just before we get started, and I'm so pleased, my name is Sandy Hawk. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Zero Trust at Cisco. And I'm joined by Wolfgang Gerlich. He's an advisory CISO at Cisco. Welcome, Wolfgang.
Hello, Sandy. So good to be doing this webinar with you.
Same here. So one thing that we just want to set the ground rules here. Zero trust is not a product. Some people may think that it's a product or lead you to believe it is, but it's really not. It's an architectural approach to securing your business. And we think Cisco is the perfect partner for that. And we're going to spend our time here during this webcast to tell you why that is true. And the good news is there's a lot of value in pursuing zero trust. We here at Cisco drink our own champagne, right? Right. Well, you and I both. Each day we are part of this really great success story. We want to start out with some positive notes on zero trust because some people are just struggling with making progress towards zero trust maturity. We at Cisco have benefited in our rollout from $3.4 million in annual savings because employees don't have to wonder if they're firing up their VPN or not. We also saved $500,000 simply by reducing help desk calls. We had fewer than 1% of users contacting the IT help desk during our zero trust rollout using Duo. And as comparison, 7% is the typical baseline for security technology rollouts. And what we really love too is we give users the chance to fix device issues on their own before they actually access an application. And because of that, we were able to avert 86,000 potential device compromises per month because we're letting users know how to remediate these device issues on their own. So that's some pretty, positive ways to start the conversation. So there is hope. You can find value in zero trust. Anything to add there, Wolf?
Yeah, I would say, first off, obviously from a Cisco perspective, we're thrilled to see these results. But from a CISO perspective, if you're out there like, hey, I'm planning my program, or if you're out there going, hey, I've 1, 2, 3 years into my program, and my journey seems to have not gone as far as I wanted. One of the things I oftentimes encourage people is to look at that slide or look at similar case study slides and imagine, what does the case study look like when you reach your next zero trust milestone? What does that look like when you knock it out of the park? What is the bragging points you want to have? And by imagining that, by picturing that, you can then work backwards into some specific outcomes you want to be delivering and some ways to measure it. So this slide here talks about the outcomes that we measure when we've worked with scientific studies, when we've done zero trust workshops, when we worked with clients and developed case studies. And they really fall under enabling the business, managing risk, and operating efficiently. And so when you think about where we're going with zero trust, it's oftentimes, let's solve a business problem, and let's solve that business problem by delivering specific use cases. And those use cases should have some of these key outcomes you see on your screen.
Yeah. And the good news is we have more good news. We did research that found that, zero trust is here to stay. That's the good news. That folks that might have just thought it was a passing thing, a marketing buzzword, no, actually 86% of the organizations that we, together with Scientia Research, as you mentioned, asked about, 86% of them are pursuing zero trust. But the downside, the not so good news, is only 2% have achieved maturity across the zero trust pillars as defined by CISA. So there's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of opportunity. Anything else to say here about these results, Wolf?
Oh, I want to pull out something I think you were the one who identified. This Scientia study, we talked to 5,000 folks, 20 to 30 countries. It's an annual study. And in previous years, we actually had more people report that they were mature with zero trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're sitting there going, wait a minute, how did it go from 60% down to 36%? And how did you put it?
I think it's the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. The more you discover, the more you realize you have no idea what you're doing.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So increased visibility can show you under those rocks what you didn't realize was hiding. So yeah, absolutely. So at Cisco, one way that we help companies kind of adopt zero trust and not get so mired down into those quagmires is to really think about zero trust in a holistic way. So it's a strategy. And if you have a framework for strategy, it's a lot easier to get everyone aligned on what the goals are, right? So I'm just going to walk through this framework. Zero trust principles, which we'll talk to in a second, which most people are aware of and what they are, but they really do inspire a strategy, one that requires a functional architecture and capabilities powered by technologies and products that work to eliminate that excessive trust and continually enforce explicit trust. And of course, customers are going to choose these technologies based on the features they care about. Sometimes it's how easy it is to implement into my environment. Sometimes it's, can I integrate these technologies with what I've already purchased? What's the time to value? Other features like that. So let's talk first about what those principles are. Hopefully these are non-controversial. The things you see on the left-hand side, most everyone would agree with. Never assume trust, always verify trust, and enforce least privilege. We used to rely on attributes like network location. Are you on the same network? segment I am, or device type to assume you're trusted, or even user account. But now when people are stealing credentials, we can no longer rely on the fact that someone has credentials and know that they're trusted, right? So we have to really do better. But it's not easy. It's not easy to put those things into practice, right? Well, if it sounds simple, don't ever trust anyone, always verify it, right? But in practice, it gets tricky. Yeah, and so we at Cisco believe that we can make it less tricky by providing the success factors that guide and provide guardrails for your zero trust strategy. So first, numero uno, respect the user, their privacy, and their productivity. Well, people talk a lot about productivity, of course, but what about privacy? So when we implement security controls like using location as an attribute, we're going to anonymize the data, preserve the privacy. It's always been our approach. We call that Wi-Fi fingerprinting. We also want to make it really easy for the user to do the right thing. So we don't put them through unnecessary hurdles, unnecessary decisions. We want to make that authentication process really optimized. And then you got to adjust policy, right? Automatically based on what's happening with the access decision. Sometimes you want to step up off strength when risk increases. Sometimes you want to ease up when it's not as risky. And then we're going to allow access, not just users to applications wherever they are, but we're going to actually enable app-to-app trust and things like that as well. So all of that's got to be consistent. Did I miss anything there, Wolf?
You know, I don't think you have. I will add one thing that for a long time we've talked about. We want to frustrate the adversary without frustrating the user. And within the zero trust world, this becomes even easier. I think of how everyone was doing these push phishing or push fatigue or push bombing, right? The adversary would send like dozens or hundreds of requests, and people would be like, oh man, I guess maybe I just need to say yes and make it go away.
Yeah.
I was setting this up in the lab and I was demonstrating it, and it popped up a message and said, you denied that request. Do you want to deny it again and pause it for an hour? I'm like, why, yes, I do. and I only had to say it once. And meanwhile, you know, the script is sending me dozens and dozens and hundreds of pushes. The adversary gets very frustrated. The user doesn't.
Yeah, let's spin their wheels, not spin ours. Absolutely. It's a great example. So here's how we do it. You know, I mentioned a little bit earlier about a functional architecture. This is essentially Cisco's functional architecture for zero trust, because you consider the requirements. If you ever read any of the CISA or NIST documents, you'll quickly see there's just a wide variety of technologies. And no single vendor can honestly, truthfully claim to deliver every single requirement. But what we offer at Cisco is a way to simplify it, a way to think about it in a functional architecture by applying zero trust security across these pillars of identity, access, and response. Because at the end of the day, zero trust means organizations must really continually verify that identity, every access decision, not just for users, but for devices, networks, clouds, apps. And then once they verify that identity, then provide that least privileged access for users, devices, networks, and apps. Even doing those things, they can't end there, right? They still need to detect and respond quickly to threats before they spread. And the only way to do that reliably in this threat landscape is to do it with generative AI and machine learning. And thankfully, Cisco can really enable that identity, access, and response capabilities across those three things you see at the bottom, across those CISA pillars: users, devices, networks, clouds, applications, and data. And so for this particular webinar, we only have 20 minutes. And so we want to focus in there on that identity and access aspect of zero trust for today's webinar. And these sound great, but what are the capabilities for this architecture? And let's drill down more into this. And Wolf, you're more technical than I am. So if you want to help us kind of understand or orient the reader to, or the watcher to what we're talking about in terms of these capabilities for zero trust.
Yeah, that's at a very high level. Again, think about this. We're trying to extend or revoke a trust boundary on every request, every session, right? Every connection. And we're going to do that based on trust signals, what we can observe about the context and conditions of that request. So with the user, that's when I'm logging in or when I'm being authorized. With the device, that's when the device is being connected or is being used as part of that user login process. And the network, of course, that's when we're plugging in the network and being accessed. If you're on the wire, if you're remote, that's when you're coming in remotely or connecting directly up to your cloud applications over your secure access service edge. And of course, on the application side, that's whenever the apps are talking in between each other and on the data sides whenever data is being accessed. And we're bringing this all into policy engines. So the capabilities we see here really enable that. What am I seeing when that user requests an application? What can tell about them? What can tell about their device? Where they're at? Is it patched? Is it up to date? Is it free from malware? All those sort of risk-based signals. And then when I'm doing the access side, not only have I gone through all the user checks and all the device checks, but now I want to look at things like, how am I connecting to that application? Where am I coming from? From a DLP perspective, is any data moving down to me that shouldn't? And when I get through those checks, I'm on the network. If it's an on-premise self-hosted application, or if it's a cloud-hosted application, the infrastructure as a service space, running through micro-segmentation, right? I'm going to extend that trust boundary on the network, just like I did in the application, just like I did at point of authentication. So there's a lot of components that come together, but what's really cool about this is that we notice something wrong at any level, right? Like, wait a minute, the user looked fine, but now they've switched locations. Or wait a minute, everything was fine and it was the right location, but now a bunch of data is flowing down to that endpoint that shouldn't happen. Or wait a minute, now they're on the network and it seems like they're scanning. Maybe they're infected and our endpoint detection software didn't catch it. At every one of those points, we have a moment in time where we can revoke trust if we need to. And that is really crucial when we talk about zero trust.
Yeah, seeing across those silos or domains is crucial. Yeah, so bringing those capabilities to bear into these use cases, did you want to build this out and we can sort of talk through the complexities and the challenges for each one of these use cases and how we at Cisco think about it?
I mean, we can look at starting from the on-premise side. Certainly the workforce is a real big push here because, let's face it, that's where most of our people are. And let's face it, it's where most of the risk comes from. So a person accessing a private application or an internet application is a very common use case. Similar with contractors and vendors. Yes, use cases are things that we see all the time as well. Now, in this day and age of hybrid work, you're probably not always in an office. Many of us are never in an office. So what about that remote access for employees or contractors or vendors? That comes into play as well. And maybe it's not only is not a company provided workspace, maybe it's not a company provided device, BYOD, or having multiple different devices we're working from. Those use cases come into play. And then you may say, Sandy, you may go, Wolf, listen, you keep talking about people. What about all the other identities in our environment, right? Some studies show anywhere from 10 non-human identities to 40 non-human identities for every one. So we also need to think about those non-human identities, things like our API calls, things like our application services, or if we're in a manufacturing space, our industrial controls, if we're in a medical space, our medical devices and IoT devices. So we can not only think about the human layer, which is where many people start. So the data shows we start with showing up to people, but we can also move into the applications and the device identities as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so let's drill down a little bit in sort of the benefits and use cases and products that deliver these capabilities for these use cases. So Duo is really brought to bear in terms of implementing that phishing resistant MFA. Like you mentioned, we're really focused on making it easy for users to do the right thing. So we want to frustrate attackers and not users. We can do that with Duo to verify, continually protect identities against those target attacks, stepping up off when context dictates and easing up when it doesn't. And then also on the on-premises environments, preserving the security at the network layer is essential. Cisco is one of the few vendors that actually builds identity security directly into the network with our product identity services engine, so that you can set up zones of trust inside of your network for things like BYOD use cases and others. So similarly, the access use cases, the products that bring that to bear, Cisco Secure Access can give users an exceptional user experience by consolidating security using an SSE architecture. So you can secure user access to apps anywhere, no matter where the user is, no matter what kind of application is, what's the legacy app, or even a modern SaaS-based one as well. You mentioned a lot, we've talked a lot about the microsegmentation use case. There's also the understanding, getting a better understanding of where these application environments are. Cloud sprawl is real. So gaining that multi-directional protection across public, private clouds, blocking ingress, egress, and lateral movement, east-west directions, as well as north to south. And we offer that capability with Cisco Multi-Cloud Defense. If you'd like to enforce microsegmentation and do it in an easy way, we offer that with secure workload as well. So yeah, depending on where you are, and that report that we mentioned at the start of the talk really kind of shows the progress that folks have made, whether it's in the workload, on their networks, or for user access to applications.
I have something to add there before you go forward, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So first off, we know like remote work is not going anywhere, right? We're going to continue to have to support people wherever they are in the world. And the old way of like VPNing everything back in and taking a hairpin turn has long since moved towards the secure access way, where you're able to run through all your security checks wherever you are. And I think that's really important. We want to be able to support people both in the office and remote. But that multi-cloud is also interesting because I was just looking at a study that showed that organizations are now launching repatriation efforts. I don't know if anyone in the audience is going through this, but people put stuff in the cloud, went, wow, that's expensive and slow, and moved it back on-prem. And so likewise, just like hybrid work is not going away, hybrid environments show no signs of going away.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
This idea, it just blew my mind, by the way, when I saw that, because we spent so much time trying to get everything up.
Yeah, right.
But this idea that you highlighted earlier, Sandy, which is once we have that identity and we've checked it, right? We went through the policy checks, everything. We can share that on a network. We can share that up to the cloud. We can share that over a secure access connection is really crucial, because then we have a consistent set of policies, a consistent way identity is reflected. We have a consistent way of doing authorization, regardless of what environment we're coming from or going to.
Mm-hmm. Great way to put it. Yeah, this is a very busy slide and we don't have much time, but what I wanted to just express is how unique Cisco is in terms of being an ideal partner for Zero Trust. And those 3 words or phrases at the bottom are really what I'm drilling down here on. Data gravity, 80% or something like that of internet traffic goes through Cisco infrastructure, where we have access to rich amounts of data and the ability to analyze that rich data. That's only going to make our access policies for Zero Trust all the more informed, giving us the ability to do that continuous policy enforcement, which is one of those areas that is really critical for Zero Trust maturity. We all know that not everyone has the same OS or the same, not everyone, like you mentioned, people have things in the cloud. They're bringing it down from the cloud. They've got multiple clouds, right? Everything is everywhere. And so we're one of the few Zero Trust vendors with that breadth of capabilities to serve as sort of like a bridge across identities, devices, clouds, networks, and applications. And that approach is going to help ease that Zero Trust adoption that we talked about. People are kind of spinning their wheels on. And we couldn't do any of that stuff without the AI-driven analytics that help identify anomalous patterns that might indicate a security breach. It also is going to help us measure how effective our Zero Trust policies are. And also give you that context-aware security posture, which is really crucial to understand when you're rolling out Zero Trust in this sort of environment. Those jawbreaker layers, too, we don't want to forget about. The fact that we have advanced services to help our customers actually adopt Zero Trust inside their organizations. We know it's not just a technology challenge, right? Adopting Zero Trust. And so we help our customers implement the technologies, integrate them with their existing environments, and being able to spot the latest threats with Cisco Talos Threat Intelligence. And of course, we have one of the richest, vast partner ecosystems to help our customers be successful as well. So we only brushed the service, just the top tier of the top use cases. We only had 20 minutes, but Wolf, let's talk about what Cisco enables in terms of the other use cases for Zero Trust.
Yeah, in the 20 minutes we have about 20 seconds left. So I would definitely encourage you guys to reach out, have conversations with your Cisco partners on these additional use cases. what we're effectively suggesting is you think about that top level case study you want to deliver. You think about the outcomes that you needed to be providing to deliver business value to your organization. You stagger in the use cases you deliver, and you deliver them over time so that you can show continuous progress quarter after quarter.
Great. And since we only scratched the surface, just know that we offer the ability to find out more information and set you up for success with our free workshops. We have some designed to help our executive leaders assess where they are with Zero Trust and build a blueprint to get to where they want to go in the strategy and planning workshop. And in the implementation and execute workshop, we give our practitioners hands-on access to a live lab environment that has Cisco Zero Trust technology so they can get their hands dirty and set up these access policies and see how our products work together to help you adopt Zero Trust security. So I think that's the end of our presentation, but thanks so much, Wolf, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sandy and Wolfgang. That was really a lovely dialogue between the two of you. I enjoyed listening to you both. And I do want to point out, I've got one more poll up here. So, it's not the last one of the day, but I think you've got your trigger fingers all set and ready to click into the poll from Cisco there and what additional information you might be looking for. Today, we won't have Sandy and Wolfgang sticking around for Q&A, but any of you that sent in questions that went unanswered will get a follow-up from the Cisco team, so do not fret. If you want to learn more right away, again, we've got that handouts tab and you will see Cisco's Security Outcomes Report, Volume 3. Super cool report there. So there's a URL link to hop over and grab that. And now I've got some more excitement for you all. That's right. It is time for another prize giveaway. And again, quick reminder, you must be present at the webinar to win. So without further ado, the next winner of the $300 Amazon gift card is Andrew Walschmidt from Texas. Congratulations, Andrew. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after today's EcoCast. Don't forget, there are still lots of chances to win. So $50 best question gift cards from each session and the third and final $300 Amazon gift card. Okay, well, I'm going to keep things moving right along here on today's EcoCast. Next up, we have from Rubrik, Atul Ashok. He is the Senior Product Marketing Manager of Data Security at Rubrik. It's always great to see our friends at Rubrik here on the EcoCast. And with that, Atul, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Atul, and I'm part of the product marketing team here at Rubrik focused on data security. And today we're going to talk about why data security is the foundation for your security posture. Let's start with the basics. What is security posture? Now, as defined by NIST, an organization's security posture is the security status of its networks, information, and systems based on the information security resources. That includes people, hardware, software, policies, etc. Security posture also takes into consideration the capabilities in place to manage the defense of the organization and to react as the situation changes. Simply put, security posture is an organization's overall state of cybersecurity readiness. It is a measure of how well an organization is prepared to protect its assets from cyber attacks. If we think about it, for the sake of simplicity, we can break down security posture into these four main segments. We have the infrastructure security that encompasses the protection of all the organization's physical and virtual infrastructure, including servers, networks, storage devices, and applications. This includes measures such as physical security, access control, and security patching. We have network security that is focused on protecting the organization's network infrastructure from unauthorized access, disruption, modification, or even complete destruction. This includes implementing features or tools such as firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and network segmentation. Now, employee awareness and training is also an important part. It is the process of educating employees about cybersecurity threats and best practices. This will help employees to identify and report suspicious activities if they were to occur. And finally, importantly, data security. It is the protection of organizations' data from unauthorized access, use, modification, again, or destruction. This includes taking measures like backup, data encryption, access control, etc. And this last piece is what's going to be the focus of today's session, data security. Now, you may be wondering why. Because in today's digital age, every single company is a data company, regardless of which vertical you operate in, be it healthcare, logistics, BFSI, manufacturing, CPMG, or any other vertical. Take your pick. Manufacturers need to keep track of their purchase orders. Healthcare organizations need access to their patient data at critical speeds. Organizations in the BFSI space need access to their transactional data to remain operational. If your organization is operational today, it needs data to run. Now, in our research at Rubrik Zero Labs, we found that a typical organization today has over 500,000 files containing sensitive data and almost 25 million sensitive data records. And if you're operating in a regulated industry, the penalties for sensitive data exposure adds up to create hefty fines for the organization. Now, traditionally, cybersecurity has focused on infrastructure security around prevention, detection, and investigation. However, infrastructure security is primarily focused on protecting systems, users, networks, and applications, not securing data, which is every organization's most valuable assets. So much so, you could actually call it your organization's lifeblood. Despite significant investments in infrastructure security, the risk of a breach can only be reduced, not eliminated. Attackers are still penetrating defenses, and just as important as reducing the likelihood of a successful attack is reducing the impact of an attack. Now, how quickly can business as usual be restored if an attack were to happen? So that's exactly what this presentation is about. We are trying to create awareness instead, and we need to think about data first. Because you can replace hardware, you can replace data centers, either you create a new one or you move to the cloud. You can even replace people and their expertise, but you cannot replace data. If it's gone for good. Your data is uniquely important to you, and it is irreplaceable. And it is ultimately the number one priority of the adversary for that reason. Securing data is the only way to truly secure your business, especially at a time when ransomware is such a pervasive threat that remains financially rewarding for attackers. There's even a new business model, RAS, similar to SaaS, but RAS stands for Ransomware as a Service. From the acronym, you can understand that with this business model, attackers don't need the technical acumen that has been expected of a traditional hacker, but can lease that expertise, so to speak, to carry out the attack and hold your data hostage. So we need to have the mindset of assume breach and must ensure that the data is available, safe, and recoverable in the event of an incident. Because data is the target of attackers. We need security at the point of data to keep data safe and recovered faster. Because when it's all said and done, you cannot replace your data. And that's why data security should be the foundation of your security posture. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at some stats too. Again, these are the numbers that we found from Rubrik's research wing called Rubrik Zero Lab. In 2022, we found that 99% of the security leaders were made aware of at least one attack, of which 59% experienced a data breach. 54 experienced BEC, which is short for business email compromise, or some other type of fraudulent transfer, and 40% encountered ransomware. Now, of the folks who did encounter ransomware, 72% did end up paying the ransom. 40% did so due to encryption events, and 39% did it to prevent data leaks. Because if you recall the earlier slide, the leakage of sensitive data, especially in the regulated industry, can lead to hefty fines. Now, the good news is that everyone is doing data security. The bad news is everyone believes what they have implemented is good data security. So how do you go about improving your data security such that you strengthen your security posture? By implementing security measures to protect your organization and its data. Now, there are various security frameworks out there, and almost every one of them can be customized to your organization's needs and requirements. But to ensure you're correctly implementing data security measures, make sure you do your research and adopt a framework that meets your requirements. For today's conversation, I'll be referencing the popular NIST cybersecurity framework. And if I recall correctly, their version 2.0 is in the works and is currently open for public comments for another month or two. So do check out their website and take a look at what's changing soon. Now, getting back to the framework itself, NIST framework is a flexible framework that provides a set of guidelines for organizations to manage cybersecurity risk. It by no means tells you the specific security controls that you need to implement, but instead provides a framework for understanding cybersecurity. For the purpose of this session, I'll be focusing on applying this framework to data security, which is, of course, a subset of the larger cybersecurity itself. Now, as you can see, this framework is organized around 5 functions or stages. We have identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So in the first stage, the identify stage, you need to assess your cybersecurity risks, assets, and vulnerabilities, such that you gain an understanding of what needs protection and prioritize your efforts accordingly. At the end of this assessment, at the bare minimum, you should be able to answer the following. Are you aware of your variables of risk exposure? Can you identify what type of sensitive data is stored? And do you know how much sensitive data is stored? I mean, if our research is an indicator, you could have roughly 25 million sensitive data records right now. Can you identify where that sensitive data is stored? And can you identify who all have access to that sensitive data and if that access poses risk to you or your organization? What happens if you're facing an attack but are unable to answer these questions? How do you deal with the resulting implications, right? In this next stage, protect stage, involves implementing safeguards and measures to defend against identified threats and vulnerabilities. From a data security perspective, this includes setting up a modern backup and recovery mechanism that you can rely on. A solution that will ensure your backups will not be tampered with and will be available to you when needed. Even better, if you can automate your backups, so you can set it and forget about it. Added bonus points, if your backup solution can protect your data across on-prem, cloud, SaaS applications, etc. Basically across all the workloads that your organization uses. In the third stage, the detect stage, organizations establish continuous monitoring capabilities to identify security incidents promptly. This includes anomaly detection, setting up systems that alert you if a threat is found in your data environment, be it a malware or a web shell that a bad actor has planted so that they can maintain persistence in your infrastructure. Ideally, you have tools in place to identify indicators of compromise or IOCs and detect these threats early before bad actors detonate the payload and encrypt the data. Or at the very least, you should be able to pinpoint when that threat was introduced into your data stream so you can identify a safe recovery point. If not, the chances of accidentally reintroducing the threat into your production systems are high, and then you're back to square one. The fourth stage, response stage, is all about what do you do once you realize you're under an attack? How do you respond? It includes incident response planning, communication strategies, and coordinated efforts to contain and mitigate the impact of the incident. This is basically multiple teams coming together against the attacker. And finally, we have the recover stage. In this final stage, we focus on the strategies you need to implement to restore operations and services to normalcy after a cyber incident. Organizations develop recovery plans and blueprints they can rely on, test the effectiveness of the plans, implement the learnings, and continuously evolve the plan to strengthen the overall security posture. Ideally, you have the tools and processes in place that makes this recovery process as painless and quick as possible. You want to have the confidence that the data you recover will help you bring back your operations online without the risk of reinfection. By following these 5 stages or functions of NIST framework, you can enhance your organization's cyber resilience and better protected critical data. And unsurprisingly, with Rubrik Security Cloud, you can defend data against cyber threats, continuously monitor data for risks, and recover business operations within hours. As you can see, all the products within the Rubrik Security Cloud platform map towards one or the other stage of the NIST cybersecurity framework. So you may be wondering, why Rubrik? Because with Rubrik Security Cloud, you can secure data wherever it lives across enterprise, cloud, and SaaS, making your business truly unstoppable. Data resilience protects your data with air-gapped, immutable access control backups, so you can secure both from insider threats as well as external bad actors. Data observability sets out to search for ransomware and other anomalies, identify classified data exposure, and potential compromise. Data remediation includes threat containment, where we are actually able to quarantine infected data, effectively isolating the entire snapshot or the individual files to prevent accidental reintroduction of the malware during a recovery exercise, thus helping you recover with the confidence your business operations will be back to business as usual quickly. With Rubrik Security Cloud, you get the comprehensive protection to build your resiliency in a single platform. Because at the end of the day, this is the million-dollar question, right? If attackers get past your defenses and carry out an attack, can you afford to wait? How much data loss can you tolerate? We believe our customer testimonials are a true benchmark of what we can deliver. And that's why we have here a quote from Aaron Pritchard, an IT systems analyst at Lang's Building Supplies, who was able to fend off a ransomware attack with hardly any interruption to the business because they had Rubrik's data security solution in place. I mean, think about it. They were asked for $15 million in ransom. They had zero data loss, and they were able to fully recover all the data, be back up and running within 24 hours. That's everything I have for you today. Hope this session was useful. If you would like to learn more about Rubrik and our product offerings, please visit rubrik.com. If you would like to learn more about data security and hear from industry experts and luminaries like Mark McLaughlin, former chairman and CEO of Palo Alto Networks, Marine Ellison, former CISO of Johnson & Johnson, Kate Quinn, Chief Trust Officer at Aon, and more, do join us at Rubrik's Data Security Summit. There's also a fireside chat between Rubrik's CEO, Bipul Sinha, and Zscaler CEO, Jay Chaudhary, where they discuss the future of data security. And of course, we are also having Alex Honnold join these discussions. He's the only person to ever free solo El Capitan in Yosemite. It's a free virtual event that will be telecast tomorrow morning on September 13th at rubrik.com. If you Google Rubrik Data Security Summit, it'll take you straight to the registration page. It'll show you the agenda, the speaker list, and so much more. If you're curious about the state of data security and want to read more of our research, do check out our Hard Truths report at rubrik.com/zerolabs. Once again, thank you for joining me today. Take care.
Listening in on the presentation. If you do have questions that you had unanswered, do not worry. The Rubrik team will definitely be following up with you on that. If you do want to learn more right away, click into the Handouts tab and you can see a link to Rubrik's Intro to Rubrik page. This is a great portal with a short and to the point grouping of videos and short articles, so you can check out more on the Rubrik solution firsthand. As I mentioned, I've got one more team that is going to be presenting to wrap up the EcoCast, and they will be here for a Q&A session with us. So keep those questions coming in as we enter the final stretch of our EcoCast here today. And with that, I'm very excited to bring not one, but two fantastic presenters who you may already recognize from a previous MegaCast, EcoCast, or Summit with us. But we have from HPE Aruba Networking, John Spiegel. He's the Director of Strategy and Field CTO. And we have Jay Tilson, Director of Strategy, Field CTO. John and Jay, thank you so much for being here with us again today to wrap up this EcoCast. And I will see you in a few minutes for some Q&A. Other than that, take it away, you two.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. In this session, we're going to talk about using SSE to empower Zero Trust access. But before we get started, let me introduce you to your host for today. My name is Jay Tilson, and I'm joined by my colleague and my friend, John Spiegel. Together, John and I have over 50 years of enterprise experience running large infrastructure and security teams. We spent the bulk of our careers sitting in your chairs and have experienced the same daily challenges as you. And not just those technical challenges, but the cultural, budget and resource challenges also. Recently, we left our enterprise roles and moved to a company called Access Security, which is now part of HP Aruba Networking. We made the move because we both believe that networking and security are marred with complexity. Stitching together a bunch of solutions that worked in the early 2000s no longer works in the world we live in today. Over the years, we have found that the old approach just created more challenges than solutions, and when deployed looked a bit like the game of mousetrap. We both believe there are better ways of doing it. So let's get started. The enterprise is undergoing the most significant transformation in history. Companies are adopting cloud like never before, with many now having a cloud-first approach. This means that the legacy systems that always used to be on-prem are now being moved to software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. Additionally to this, there is a huge rise in the number of IoT devices in use, with statistics showing that there will be more than 15 billion IoT devices connected to the enterprise infrastructure by 2029. Lastly, the pandemic created a massive shift in our workforce, with hybrid work now being the norm for more than 50% of our workers. This means our users, that their devices, our data and our applications are now everywhere. And this huge change requires a new approach when it comes to network security. We need this to keep access safe and fast, as our legacy solutions are really no longer sufficient, and more of them are being compromised. Statistics show that the average cost of a data breach now stands at $4.8 million, up more than 25% since 2022. But before we move on, let me just give you one more scary statistic. 80% of IT organizations found IoT devices on their network that they either did not install or cannot secure. So let that sink in for just a minute.
Thank you, Jay. Those were some sobering statistics. Why? The world has changed. Companies are embracing more and more technology, new ways of solving old and new problems. But there's a wrinkle. How we build, operate, and secure our networks hasn't changed much since the last century. Take the classic hub and spoke model. Designed for an era when you managed and secured your IT world out of a single data center. Your applications, your data, and even those crown jewels were protected behind the high digital castle and moat walls in the forms of firewalls and other physical boxes. This was successful in the time of centralization, but this is no longer the case. Applications, data, and now work is distributed. The assets of the enterprise are now strewn across our global digital landscape. And the threats, they've evolved too. Jay called this out, the scourge of ransomware, nation-state actors, and it seems like every week there's another well-known publicly traded company filing an 8K with the SEC calling out a material impact due to cybersecurity. So what is to be done? One response is to decentralize the castle and moat. So build more of them. Maybe smaller versions, but many more of them. This is really a replay of the hub and spoke design. The idea is to move your legacy-based security systems that used to run on hardware to cloud-based solutions. This is really driven by the firewall vendors who want to protect their revenues and continue to sell tin. The main aim here was to remove some of the burdens of keeping systems secure. However, in a lot of cases, this still meant backhauling internet traffic and the corporate network as well as the VPN back to the data center and leveraging some risky VPN solutions. Although the design was supposed to make things simpler to manage, in my experience, it's led to more complexity and cost. In other words, It's a vast increase in your management surface. More to manage and more to protect. Then there's SSE. In my mind, this is a solution built for today. It takes into account that applications, users, and now their devices are everywhere in our digital world. So let's talk a little about what people are asking for in a modern SSE solution. They want to build a solution that is built from the ground up with simplicity in mind. We all know that complexity does not make for good security designs. They want a single solution from a single vendor with a single UI and a single data lake, as well as a single reporting engine for all elements of SSE. They also want a solution to be built from the ground up with zero trust as part of its DNA. People really don't want a bunch of separated, acquired, or developed products that were brought together in a portfolio. That's too complex to manage and administer, and often leads to frustration from IT teams and your customers. That's the employees that you service. They want a secure access from any type of application, whether they are an enterprise employee or those hard to manage third parties and contractors, where installing an agent is impossible. They want to give access to all resources, including private applications, SaaS applications, and internet access from a single place and a single mechanism. They also want a solution to be built for today, that they know how this architecture works and how it makes their life simpler. They also want a solution that is built atop the cloud giants, which has all the features available everywhere, rather than a solution that's built in a legacy data center on top of hardware. Doing so doesn't make for flexibility. It also doesn't scale to elastic resources that we need to meet today's needs. They also don't want to have their users going to different POPs or different services. Instead, all POPs must offer the same features and provide the best user experience possible. The architecture should also eliminate bandwidth problems. It should be resilient, redundant, and offer the best possible experience for all types of users at any time. And the most important is that it's critical for users always to get the fastest possible access to resources from wherever they are without the need to backhaul back to the corporate network and relying on VPN. Jay, over to you for more.
So you may ask, what are the benefits of SSE? Well, firstly, it increases your security posture, providing zero trust access to all of the services and applications. You eliminate your attack surface and reduce exposure. You also get to enforce least privilege access to all applications and services, including private applications, SaaS applications, and the internet. This will help you protect your business against ransomware and data loss. Secondly, you get to deliver the best experience possible to end users and IT administrators. So end users receive quick, seamless access to applications and services and data every time because of our intelligent smart routing across over 1,000 edges. Also, IT administrators can control access centrally and granularly, making it easy to secure the business from a holistic perspective. And lastly, you get to optimize your business with one solution for all of your secure access needs. You get to simplify and unify networking and security, and minimize complexity by reducing the number of point solutions you have in play. Additionally, you also get to save money by reducing the reliance on application-based security solutions, and you can also effortlessly scale with our cloud-based system. At the end of the day, our customers are key. At HPE, we believe in customer first, customer last. So let's look at some examples. Delta Dental got a jumpstart on their Zero Trust program by replacing 4 separate legacy VPN solutions with our SSE platform. Then there is UKG. They went all in with our unified SASE platform. This is a true combination of networking and security. And this gave them fast connectivity from every user and every device to every service with full security. And then there is VisionWorks. Their journey was about network transformation. They used our platform to help them move applications from on-prem to the cloud, with little to no impact on their employees. So let's dive a little bit deeper into our SSE solution. When you look at the SSE market, you will find that each solution really emphasizes one of these technology areas. It could be secure web gateway, as the company started there, or maybe cloud access security broker, as that was the target market they were looking to be competitive in. But our situation is very different than that. We believe the future is about transitioning to a new security strategy based on zero trust. Our platform is designed to provide the resources required to perform a function and nothing more. And then we vigilantly watch for any indication of change and adapt access accordingly. We built our platform to deliver agentless zero trust network access for those hard to solve use cases of third parties and contractors, where it's really difficult to install an agent. We then added an agent to ensure full VPN replacement. And then on top of the same code base, we built out the other SSE features. We believe the future is about delivering secure access for applications, no matter whether they are in the cloud or in your private data centers. Services must be delivered the same no matter of the location of the user, the application, or the data, and along with security checks such as MFA and device posture. And we believe we have elegantly solved this for both your employees and those difficult to secure third-party resources. So let's just be clear. Our platform was built on zero trust at its core, and then we added the other SSE features to the platform. Secure Web Gateway for securing employees from internet-based threats. CASB for leveraging SaaS assets like Salesforce or Office 365. And for me, the critical element that people often forget, DEM or Digital Experience Monitoring. Giving visibility back to the IT and security teams that we lost when our users left our networks.
Thank you, Jay, for diving deep into how SSE works. Let's move on to another topic. This one is about the concept in the industry of single vendors. Essentially, one vendor to solve all of your cyber challenges. We at HPE believe otherwise. There are tools we are really good at, and there's other areas where we believe that partnering is best. We believe in a concept called cyber mesh. Bring together the best of breed technologies and partner with them. Align closely to solve your cyber challenges without placing you in a walled garden where the vendor does an okay job, but not an amazing one, while also raising your costs. We at HPE are amazingly good at policy and SSE, but for identity, endpoint, SIM, and even SD-WAN, we believe you need to select your top-tier partner. In essence, we want you to embrace your inner Nick Fury and say, I'm here to talk to you about an Avengers initiative and build your cyber security team of heroes. All right, now for some advice on that superhero Avenger interview. When you're looking at SSE providers, there are some key things to consider because all of them have strengths and weaknesses. The best recommendation I can provide to you is to review them through the lens of simplicity. If a solution looks and sounds complex, it will be complex. It will also be expensive and time-consuming to manage. Therefore, first focus on a unified approach. Stitching together point products is a thing of the past. New software-defined solutions with integrations designed to provide visibility are the modern path forward. In order to stop a threat, you need to see it. A unified approach from day one gives you the advantage here. Next, it's about policy. If you have to manage a policy through several UI interfaces, you're going to make mistakes. We're all human, so focus on a solution which can help you reduce those errors and provide options for securing both modern and legacy applications. Deployment It's another consideration. Here, look for flexibility. Demand options for both cloud and on-prem. If you're forced in one direction, ask for choice. Our businesses are not one size fits all. We need tools to align with the business, not businesses aligned with the tool. And finally, yeah, AI. It's a hot topic, and that buzz, it is loud. That said, AI can operationalize and up-level your security immensely. Make sure to ask about it. All right, we've talked a lot today about technology, SSE, cyber mesh, among many other things. But at the end of the day, there's a route for moving off the legacy Castlin moat and moving to an SSE framework. And let's be honest, it's a journey. And like any journey, you need to plan ahead. Because this can be a long walk. And if anyone tells you otherwise, you need to question that. Why is this so? Well, we're talking about what were in the past multiple point products and replacing them with an integrated solution built to solve the challenges of today. Distributed applications, data in every corner of the internet, and now the distributed workforce. To do that, you need to consider your IT budgets, your resource budgets, your network, as well as your peers in either the network or security departments. You must seek alignment. If you do, and you take the time to plan your journey, you will see success and realize a better time to value. But where you start, that's up to you. It's about solving critical business challenges, creating outcomes for your company. So I recommend using this slide as a guide. From my perspective, I've seen a lot of success starting with an agentless third-party solution for access, starting to move off legacy VPN. As Jay mentioned, they are too risky. And according to a dark reading report, 60% of breaches at some point involve third parties. So gain a quick win with a ZTNA access using agentless. Secure your network and protect against lateral movement. Agentless access is a great place to start and can make for a quick win for your business. Then continue your walk. Look to secure your workforce with a technology called Secure Web Gateway. Or maybe it's about securing SaaS applications with a CASB. Or maybe it's about getting off that legacy VPN for all of your employees and moving over to ZTNA. The key here is to put one foot in front of the other. Start the journey. All right, so what's next after that? Reach out to an expert. Maybe you want to understand the value of this approach. Maybe it's about getting a value assessment. We're happy to work with you and your team on how you can understand how to get the best value for a purchase and making a migration to SSE. What tools do you want to consolidate? How do you want to retire your old hardware? And if you want to see more of the product, maybe reach out and ask for a demo. We'd love to show off simplicity, as we believe this concept is extremely powerful. As we all know, complexity does not lead to good security designs. Or, if you just want to understand more about the space, download our VPN risk report. Learn why more companies are making the move to this SSE framework. It's really up to you, so pick a path.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to spend with John and myself today. If you have any questions about using SSE to empower your zero trust access, please feel free to contact us. We'd love to talk.
Well, John, Jay, I'm sure you'll have a number of people reaching out to talk. You guys are always great presenters to have here on the EcoCast. And I look forward to posing some questions from the audience to you in just 5 seconds. But before I do, I'm going to point out this is our final poll of the day. So any additional resources you are curious about getting from the HPE Aruba networking team, be it a live demo, a data sheet, a customer case study, this is your easy button, this is your wish list. Just plunk that in there, and we will make sure that the team at HP Aruba Networking sends that your way after today's EcoCast. And with that, John, are you ready to answer some questions from this audience today?
Yeah, let's go. Excited to see what they have.
Okay, great. Okay, first one here from Michael. It says, based on the Gartner SSE framework, there are quite a few products that are consolidated into one. Does this impact speed in which you ramp up a platform like this?
It can. It really depends on what outcomes, what business problems you're looking to solve and where you start. And that's why we displayed the journey slide there. So really comes down to what problem are you looking to solve? Is it SWIG for protecting from internet threats? Is it ZTNA to replace a VPN gateway? Is securing SaaS applications with a CASB your area of challenge? And then you need to look at what you have in your portfolio today, and then start to make some decisions, because some of those products that you may have today still may have value associated, and that could be a depreciation, could be support. And really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is eliminate multiple point products from multiple vendors and start to bring them together with a single vendor approach or single platform. And that's really what Gartner's calling out.
Okay, nice. Great answer. Next question, since there are a few more rolling in here, we'll see how many we have time for. It says, I see that you integrate with the larger cybersecurity ecosystem with SIEM, etc., but do you provide insights within the platform itself?
Absolutely. There's two mechanisms that you can leverage. The first one is called digital experience monitoring, and that really is targeted at the help desk or the operations folks. So when they get a call about application performance or network slowness, they have essentially a dashboard they can go into and quickly decide where the problem is. Is it that last mile? Is it the device has a runaway CPU process? Or is the application itself exhibiting problems? That really helps them to identify where that problem is and route the trouble ticket to resolve the problem in a very timely manner. The second area is the ability to search the telemetry, which we send off to a single data lake. And that is called Insights, where you can start to hunt and peck and query the database to understand, are there threats in my environment, or why did this particular thing happen? So yeah, for both security teams and the NOC team, there's dashboards for them and areas where they can start to do some analysis and gain some insights.
Okay, nice. And how customizable is that?
It is customizable from a search perspective. We continue to add more capabilities to it. Long term, what we'll have is a chat GTP style interface where you can start to query it and it will send back results. As well, you can stream that telemetry off into your SIEM or whatever mechanism you want. So,
okay, nice. Well, speaking of SIEM and other things, this question is, how does your solution handle integrations with third-party tools such as SIEM, SOAR, and EDR?
Absolutely. So we can stream that data or the telemetry from our system off to that using an API. It's very straightforward to use, or you can leverage a syslog function and stream it that way.
Okay, nice. I do believe that's all the time we've got for today for Q&A, but if your question didn't get answered, of course, I know that the team at HP Aruba Networking will absolutely reach out and follow up with you. But I did give our first couple presenters this kind of mic drop moment as I presented it today, John. So I want to ask, is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Anything, be it a call to action, a moment to brag about what you guys do and leave an impression?
No, I mean, really, it's about this transition to finally solve the challenge of security within our very difficult landscape that we have today. Security was really kind of left off in terms of networking. That's a problem with our distributed workforce, our distributed applications. And really what the SASE framework looks to do is solve that challenge so you can have both speed and security and application performance together. So HPE, we're at the forefront of that. And one of the advantages we have is that long history of networking. So we're able to do it unlike some of the other vendors because we can get it down to a switch port, a AP port, and provide that security, not only from the cloud, but from the local area network. So it's what we call universal zero trust.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I am going to let you go, but it's great to have you back on here, and I hope to see you again soon.
Excellent. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. A pleasure. Okay, and with that, if you do want to learn more right away, we still have that handouts tab. If you haven't grabbed anything from there yet, this is your time as we are wrapping up the EcoCast shortly. So make sure you download those PDFs, click those links, save them, bookmark them. Make sure you get all those valuable resources from all of our presenters today. What's in the handout tab from HP Aruba Networking? It's a PDF. It's SSE at a glance, and you're going to be able to learn about enabling seamless and secure access for every user, device, and application from anywhere with HPE Aruba Networking SSE. But for now, we've got one more exciting final prize giveaway, our final $300 Amazon gift card. One last reminder, you must be present, live, and lucky at the webinar to win. And drum roll on your desks or wherever you are today. This is going out to Steve Branham from South Carolina. And just to recap, these are the three lucky winners from today's EcoCast. The first gift card went out to Johnny Choi from South Carolina, Andrew Waldschmidt from Texas, Steve Branham from South Carolina. Congratulations to all three of you, and as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after today's webinar, and do not forget that those best question gift cards from each session will be awarded, and we'll reach out to a few more lucky winners as well. If you are on the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, EcoCast, or MegaCast webinar, we would absolutely love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com and learn a little bit more about how that works. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank our speakers from Zscaler, Netscope, Cisco, Rubrik, and HPE Aruba Networking one final time for making this EcoCast possible. And I want to thank all of you out there in the audience for being interactive, saying hello, shouting out where you're from, asking some great questions. And of course, just taking the time to be here today. I know sometimes we're so caught up in doing our work that we can't always prioritize a little bit of time to learn and strategize and think ahead about implementing some new tools and strategies. So the fact that you did that today is fantastic. I hope you all have some interesting ideas and tips and you feel a bit more informed and equipped to tackle and implement some of these opportunities at your organization. And most of all, I hope you all had fun with me today. Before you take off, be sure to mark your calendars for a upcoming EcoCast. This one's actually tomorrow. It's short, it's sweet, it's just two presenters, and it's about supporting, extending, and protecting virtualized and containerized environments. So if that's something that pertains to you and your needs, come on by. It is the same time, Wednesday, April 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. I hope I hope to see all of you again soon. And until then, have an absolutely magical day. Thank you and take care.